Sometimes when you do a podcast about music and drinking, and then a podcast about, enjoying a drink and maybe occasionally listening to music, sometimes those two things just come together perfectly. And it's going to happen with our next guest, as we welcome in a cool dude who's doing some cool things and is going to have an event here in Kentucky here pretty soon. Welcome in. I want to say bar conversations are neat and mixed, but, it's just hops and spirits. I'm your host, Jonathan Green. And we've got with us a singer-songwriter. And he's also the founder of Songwriters in Paradise, which, by the way, Songwriters in Paradise, sip, I mean, a marketing genius right there as well. Let's welcome in Patrick Davis.
What's up, John? Thanks for having me, man. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Now, did you come up with Songwriters in Paradise and know it was going to shorten down to SIP, or did that just somehow happen?
I honestly don't even remember exactly how it happened. It sounds like something I make. I love dad jokes, and stupid things like that. So it sounds like something that some of my buddies or somebody said something, and it just was like, oh my gosh, but it's been a decade or so now that we've been doing SIP in different spots. So, and it does make a whole lot of sense because all the spots that we do it in Napa. We do it in Healdsburg, which is in Sonoma County, out in California. We do it in Cabo, which is, tequila. And now we're coming to Bardstown. So SIP makes a lot of sense.
No, like I said, I love it, and we'll get into the sip part here in a little bit. But you're, like I said, you're a singer songwriter. You do this thing. You do this music thing, which is kind of how all this, I'm sure, started. So, what drew you into songwriting? And when did you realize that was something that you could do for a living?
Man, I grew up in South Carolina. My dad's a musician, so I grew up around musicians. I didn't play music until pretty late, almost getting to college. I played sports growing up, but I remember instantly once I did start playing the guitar and singing a little bit, I kind of fell in love with the songwriting aspect of the music that I listened to. Was all at that time it would have been like it was James Taylor and it was I don't know, it was Neil Young and Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen and those guys just kind of I fell in love with those guys. And then as I got a little older, I went to school at the University of South Carolina, so I apologize to all you UK folks out there, but yeah, I went to South Carolina and I was lucky enough to become friends with the Hootie and Blowfish guys. They were a good bit older than I was, but the Hootie guys were from Columbia, and so they kind of took me under their wing, kind of helped me navigate some of the world of, I guess the music business. But I also recognized that I loved songwriting. I loved playing just with acoustic guitar and making stories up. And the stories, the best stories come from Nashville. And that's kind of that's where the songwriters are stationed. And so it's like you go to get the best whiskey, you go to Kentucky. You want the best songwriters, you go to Nashville, Tennessee. And so I recognized that. And so I never really grew up on massive amounts of country music, but I always loved, I loved the storytelling aspect. So I loved Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson and Merle and Waylon, all the guys that are kind of like, they're kind of old hat now. You just say outlaw country, but those were the guys that were telling those great stories, or Marty Robbins and these guys. So and they were all Nashville guys. So I said, well, I'll move. I want to go to Nashville and check it out. And that's essentially what happened. I went up there recognizing that could be the place that I could write those songs and probably make a living doing it. And so for the past 20 plus years, I've written songs for, I don't know, for Darius Rucker, as I mentioned, Morgan Wallen, Guy Clark, Lady Antebellum, or Lady A. I've had close to 100 songs recorded by different people. But the business changes, just like the bourbon business or the whiskey business. It changes fast. And when technology started coming, it really changed the way that songwriters and performers were getting paid. And I recognized that. And so that was really why Songwriters in Paradise happened. I'd stopped performing live for a while. And I was like, man, I got to get back out and start playing again. I miss it, but also just as a financial, as a means to continue to be able to play music forever, I need to make sure that I'm not just depending on the revenue streams from songwriting, because songwriting revenue has really dried up over the past decade or so. So that, and it was fortuitous because now I get to come to Bardstown or to Napa or wherever and drink with my buddies.
I was gonna say, yeah, it seems like it's a great combination there, and you kind of talk a little bit about the music you grew up on, or at least kind of how you got drawn into country. So, I mean, do those musical influences still kind of shape your sound today, or how have you evolved over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like what all those musicians that I mentioned, I think they just they set the bar so high that for me, because I was raised on what I consider to be kind of the top tier, the Bachs and the Beethovens of contemporary music, for what we do, that I force myself to try to write and perform and record songs that are going to be, that I hope that Willie Nelson would hear and be like, oh, okay, that's all right. I mean, that's kind of what you're aiming for. And so I feel like that's always in my music. I have a new album coming out in a month or two, and some new stuff, and I'm always aiming for just making sure that it's a good question, because it is kind of like my heroes. It's like I would love to think that if this was played for, any of the folks I mentioned, that they maybe wouldn't instantly just turn it off. And I've been very, very fortunate. I mean, like, I did move to Nashville. Guy Clark was a huge influence for me, and he was a Nashville guy. And I don't know, some of your listeners probably know Guy. And I was lucky enough to write songs with and for Guy for albums and things. And I learned from it's I know this is hops of spirits, so I guess it's like you're learning from a master distiller who's been doing it who's like 80, and he's been doing it for so long. When I got to work with Guy Clark, it was like I was learning from that person who was trying to, like I always say with Guy, it was like he was sprinkling a little fairy dust on those of us that were lucky enough, because I was a 20-year-old, 25-year-old kid, and so I was so lucky because, being in Kentucky, you'll appreciate this. There was only like 5 of us that Guy would write with. Guy was about 70 years old. He would write with myself, my buddy Jed Hughes, the young guys. He would write with Ashley Monroe, who's an artist, but he would also write with Chris Stapleton, And so Stapleton was one of the guys that he was like, he recognized, of course, Chris is on a whole other level, but it's just, he recognized there was something in each of us that he wanted to make sure that magic was passed down the line. And I feel like that's what I'm lucky that I still get to kind of continue that lineage. I hope that what I'm doing is, because in today's world where everything's a fad, I mean, you see it in your world, like everything's a fad. It's like, what flavor are we coming up with this week? Like it's just, and that's the same thing with music. And I feel like I was very, very fortunate to work with some folks that are the real deal. And so I'm trying desperately as I get older to make sure that I continue to put out that type of music. And it might not be exactly what's happening. It might not be it's definitely not the pop thing or whatever's going on. And for the 18-year-old kid, it might not matter to them right now, but I hope that it lasts a lot longer than that.
Well, and like a good song, like a good bourbon, it transcends time, and like you said, you realized a while ago that you wanted to do a few other little things, and Songwriters in Paradise came to be where you could kind of, make an extension of yourself and kind of do some other things. So what inspired, I mean, I know that's kind of what led you to, you saw the changing tides, but what made you do Songwriters in Paradise, and how did that first event come together?
Oh man, it was really just, I always have been approached about playing shows. As a, even when I wasn't playing a lot, I would still have people that were fans and they'd call. And so I had been offered a show down in the Bahamas at a resort down there. And I kind of just said, hey, in lieu of just me coming down, they wanted me to bring a band down and play for a night or two. I said, what if I just bring some of my songwriting buddies down? And this isn't a new idea. I mean, like the Bluebird Cafe, the Bluebird's been around. That's basically home base for all of us, So we've all been playing the Bluebird for as long as the Bluebird's been around. And so but I didn't realize that what we take for granted in Nashville is like kind of magic to everyone else in the world. And so that's essentially what I said, hey guys, I want to bring down just some buddies and we'll play kind of Bluebird Cafe style shows for you guys. And that went really, really well, to the point where that kind of kicked off the Songwriters in Paradise events. That was probably 12 or 13 years ago now in the Bahamas. And we started doing kind of a SIP. It's called SIP Hope Town. We were doing it in the Bahamas. The Bahamas got hit by a massive Hurricane Dorian, about 5 or 6 years ago, which kind of made it almost impossible to continue. It really hurt that area, which is coming back great, but we haven't been back yet. But that was the start of it. And that was the first time I recognized that doing these in the round, we call them in the round performances, where we're kind of just, we're on stage telling stories and laughing and kind of playing together, but also just kind of listening to each other. Those were very magical moments for the listener or the attendee. And I'm kind of one of those people that I get bored very easily, so I love to do a lot of things. And I kind of figured out, I was like, wait a second, this is a really cool concept. I want to see if I could do this on a grander scale. And I mean, it really was just an excuse for me and my buddies to go to the Bahamas, play some music, have some, I don't know, what Calicks or whatever they're drinking, some margarita or whatever, some Bahama Mamas, whatever they're drinking down there, and just be in the sun and the fun and have a great time. And it was, I think the fact that it was so organic and so, I wasn't trying to create some big juggernaut, of industry. I was just like, hey, this is a fun idea for me and my buddies. And that, I think that resonated with folks. And I've tried very hard over the past decade as SIP has expanded to continue to have that same really small mentality, because the Bluebird Cafe, which everyone loves, the Bluebird's only really 85 to 90 seats a night. And so you've heard of this Bluebird Cafe. Anyone that, may be a fan of country music or of Nashville has heard of the Bluebird Cafe. Well, the Bluebird, you think, oh man, it must be this huge, expansive spot, and it's not. It's 90 seats. It's like being in a living room. And so I really want the SIP model to follow that, because I keep it really usually under 100 people a night, like unless there's something crazy where the venue has enough space to go to like 150. But I really want it to be that small thing, which I think is, we talked about the Kentucky Bourbon Festival off air here. And I think it's important, so important, when you get to experience the story directly from the creator, in an intimate, small environment. It's so much better than 1,000 people in an auditorium or whatever. It's just a different experience, and that's what we love about being songwriters, and that's what I love about SIP.
Well, and like you said, it's grown. I mean, the experiences have led you, from the Bahamas to Napa, Cabo, and others. And now you're headed to Bardstown this fall. What drew you to of all places Bardstown, Kentucky?
Hey man, I didn't know anything about Bardstown, Kentucky, until a few years ago. I guess I'd probably seen it on a bottle and just kind of just like, just in passing. It's like Napa's the same way. Like in Napa, you'll see Oakville, or you'll see St. Helena, these on the bottle. And if you don't know those areas, you don't really know what that means. You just know it says Kentucky bourbon, so you just go, oh, Kentucky. You don't really understand the small little areas that are so important to that whole infrastructure. And so our videographer, for SIP, who my wife had met on a photo shoot. His name is Zach Sinclair, and Zach is from Bardstown. And Zach has been doing video for SIP for the past 4 or 5 years, and uh, he actually went to my wife and said, "Hey, I'd really like to talk about SIP in Bardstown." And Lauren was like, "Well, okay, you probably want to vet this out a little bit before you bring it to Patrick." And he waited a couple of years, and finally he said, "Hey, man, I want to talk to you about Bardstown." And I was kind of like, that's where you're from, right? And I was like, but what's in Bardstown exactly? He goes, it's the bourbon capital of the world, bro. Which was funny because I just, everyone there knows it, but not, it's gonna, hey, eventually everyone will know. But so Zach was the one that brought me into Bardstown. I went and visited probably a couple of years ago now, and I grew up in a small town in South Carolina, about I don't know, 6 or 7 thousand people, called Camden, South Carolina. Well, Camden reminds me a lot of Bardstown. Very small, quaint. We don't have any distilleries, but but it's still just, I got that feeling. The same little restaurants everybody goes to. Everybody knows everybody. They're all waving at each other on the street. Very very. And I love that feeling because I grew up in it. And so I went up and I went and met with the Heaven Hill guys, and met with the Beam guys, and met with the county folks there, the tourism department, and they're all wonderful. Like, shout out to Stacy and all those guys. They're all super sweet. And the thing that I guess I learned from that initial trip was, wow, this is a great place, and they do have some world-class brands. I mean, these massive brands, but they didn't have a hotel yet. They didn't have a real destination, because for SIP, we really want a place where, even though it may only be 75 to 100 people, we like to try to make as many people as we can stay on property together, because that creates more of that family, that super intimate environment, not just for the experiences that we have during the night, the evening for the shows, but also for afterwards, where we're, smoking cigars and drinking and playing guitars around the fire, So that was what kind of put a pause on it for a year or so, until we waited on the Trail Hotel to open. And that was kind of Zach said, hey, well, wait, in a year there's going to be a hotel. So that was kind of the big I guess the that was the thing that needed to be checked off the box before we could actually move forward with a SIP, and so all of that happened very over the past year and a half, very organically. I didn't like look on a in a bourbon magazine and be like, where's the place to go? It wasn't and it's also 2 hours from Nashville, which is also crazy. I mean, it's just we can drive. I drive to Bardstown to go visit or to do some work, and I leave at 9. I lose an hour because it's Eastern Standard Time, but I'm there at like lunch. I work for 5 hours, run around, and then I get home at 6 o'clock, and it's crazy. Like it's just a very crazy experience, but it's beautiful. People are wonderful, and all your listeners out there know, or your viewers out there know, it's incredible. Incredible juice. So
No, I mean it's a cool place. I mean, it's got a ton of history, it's got the bourbon, but there's just more to it than that. There's a lot of just like you said, quaintness of that small town, and for those that have never been to a SIP event, how does it differentiate itself from other songwriter festivals, concerts, things like that, and truly makes it its own experience?
yeah, and hey, look, I am all about as many songwriting experience or festivals and things as there possibly can be because I think it's very important for I want songwriting to last forever and I want my friends to make money. So, but SIP I think is very very different, and I know that from the songwriters that attend and also the festival are the attendees that are at the we call it well, I don't even call it a festival, I call it an experience because it's not really a festival. It's meant to be Bardstown whiskey, bourbon. The best story wins. I love going to Heaven Hill and them telling me about Old Fitz. I mean, like it's like those stories are incredible, and it makes you want to drink Old Fitz. It's like that's what you want. You want to go to Beam and hear Fred and Freddie tell you about these stories. You want those stories, and it's not just about that juice. It's also the story, and that's kind of what songwriting is. And the best way to experience that is to get those really one-on-one. That's why the Bluebird Cafe works. I keep bringing up the Bluebird, but it works because it's 100 people. It's like a living room. It's like, I don't know, it's like there's 50 people in your kitchen and 50 people in your den, and you're sitting around playing. That's what it feels like. And so that's what I want to do with SIP. That's the experience that is completely different than most of I'd say 99% of the events I've ever been to that are these types of, songwriter events, whatever that may look like. We want it to be the best. When you walk in, it's not just the music. It's incredible. That's why we go to places like Napa or like Bardstown. You go to these places where they're going to have the best of the best. I want it to be where the music is going to be incredible, but I also want the drink to be out of this world. I want at Heaven Hill, they're putting together a special, a menu for us. That's there's a general admission, a regular ticket that gets you this list, and then there's the VIP bar which gets you this list, and they're making sure. I can't promise it's going to be, who knows what they're going to sell out of this week at Bourbon Festival, but it's going to be incredible, incredible whiskey and bourbon at all of the events, and then also the food component, which is not a sit-down meal, but it's supposed to be very heavy. I always say when people are drinking either a bottle of wine or they're drinking, like 142 proof, bourbon. They need something substantial to make sure they can still walk themselves out. So we work really hard, but the biggest thing is that you just get an experience. It's like being backstage. I always say this. I've said this before, but if you spend crazy amount of money to go get backstage access or VIP thing to a big concert in Louisville or at the KFC or whatever you guys have. What do y'all have? What's that arena called?
The Center.
Oh, okay, yeah, that one. If you can pay an exorbitant amount of money, and they're going to usher you back in the back. They're going to say, "Oh, hey, this is backstage," and then they're like, "Okay, here comes the artist." You're going to take a picture with them for 2 seconds, and you're going to be like, "I'm a really big fan," and they're going to be, "Thanks," and that's it, and you have an Instagram moment. And that's the experience, and then you're going to go back out into the masses, and it's going to be, what it's going to be, and that's still beautiful. I understand that, but this is the complete opposite of that. It's meant to be that you're going to be hanging out with us the entire time. We're not just walking in and walking on stage. We are actually there's usually 12 to 15 songwriters at a SIP. Well, we're there every night, whether or not there's only 6 of us to perform each evening, but we're all there every night, drinking, hanging out, talking to everybody. So you will have just seen James Otto perform Just got started loving you were in color and the night before, and then the next day he's just going to be hanging out at at Beam or Heaven Hill or Presbyterian, wherever we're at. He's going to be hanging out, and you're going to get to talk to him and become actually friends with the guy. Like it's not like it's just completely different than. And we love playing for thousands and thousands of people. Like that's a great feeling. But we also really, really like it when we can actually just kind of hang out and be like in this really intimate, quiet environment, because that's part of it. It's just the experience that we all want. You want that. You want that. I don't know. Was it the bourbon, the tour when you go to Heaven Hill and they take you back through all the. You want to go in the Rick House. And we want every experience at SIP to be that. We want it to be like you feel like you're like, wow, I can't believe that I'm hanging out here with these guys. And the other big component is for the folks from Beam, hopefully Freddie's, depending Fred or Fred, like those guys, we want them to, so you're getting access to be able to talk to you're drinking it, and he's also standing right here beside you in a controlled environment that's not 3,000 people, not 1,000 people. It's kind of 75 to 100 people that are, I don't know, vetted's the wrong word, but it just, that if you're buying a ticket to SIP, then you expect the best of the best, and that's kind of what I want to present with that.
Well, and I love that because you really truly get to know more about behind the songs, how, like you said, it's like the tour going through the distillery. You really get to see how everything's made, and in a sense, that's what you're doing with the songwriters. You get to see, how the song actually came to life, what it was like before it hit the radio, and all that. And you talk about that lineup of songwriters that come to the events, to the experiences. How do you go about curating the grouping that's going to be each place? Is it friendships? Is it chemistry? I know some of it's availability because everyone is doing a lot of things, but how do those lineups come together?
Yeah, availability is always a part of it, but they're all just my buddies. That's you kind of have to be once again it's like vetted. Like there are a few people that I haven't ever met, but one of my dear friends has been like, man, you gotta bring in so and so, and so. I probably get 2 to 3 emails a week from people, with managers and agents, and people be like, hey, we'd really like to, and I'm like, well, it's funny, but I'm like, well, yeah, of course you would. We're in Napa for a week. I bet you would like to do this show, but that's it's really just I've been lucky enough to be in Nashville for 20 plus years, and I just have a pretty thick, little black book of my buddies. But I also have to make sure that not all shows or not all experiences or not all of these songwriter events are created equal. So because there is so much access between, the attendee and the performer, well, I need to make sure that the performer is someone that is good in those experiences, so that's why Christian Bush from Sugarland, well, Christian's won Grammys and done all the things, and he produces Megan Maroney now, and he tours all over the world. But the thing is that Christian is also just he grew up in Sevierville, Tennessee. He's just he can talk to he can talk to anybody, and so you want him to be someone who is in that environment because he really wins in that environment. I mentioned James Otto earlier. James is that way. He's going to sit up and drink. He loves scotch, but he's going to drink some whiskey too. So it's just those are the types of people you want. You want to line up. There's you go down the list of guys. All of them, guys and girls, are people that are just great. We have a couple Kentuckians, come in as well. We have Matresa Berg. Matresa is one. She's a songwriter, Hall of Famer in Nashville. She wrote "You and Tequila" for Kenny Chesney, and she also wrote "Strawberry Wine," which is one of the biggest songs in the history of country music. But she's actually really excited about it. She actually told me it's so funny. Matresa goes, all right, can I invite some of my family? I was like, yeah. She goes, you sure? They like whiskey. I'm like, well, I guess so. Like, what's that mean? But it's just that's but that Aaron Retier is coming, who's, he's won big awards as well, but all of those people are not there because of their talent, which is extraordinary. It's because they're great hangs, and that's what I want. I want the biggest compliment I can get from SIP, from the songwriters, is when they go, man, anytime you want me back, I will do every one of these. I've had, but the biggest ones from the attendees is, I've had people tell me before, they're like, hey, never expand this, charge me more money. but don't make more people come because I don't. I want it to stay like this. And then the other thing that's always wonderful to see is we have a lot of folks in the SIP world that follow SIP around. So there'll be people that'll be in SIP Bardstown that have come to SIP Napa already this year, or they're going to go to SIP Cabo. And what's really wonderful to watch is those people that didn't know each other, like somebody from Florida and somebody from California, all of a sudden they start vacationing together, like because they become friends at these events. And that's really what. And once again, I think that I know that happens at other events. I just think that because of the overall story, it's not just the story that you're hearing on stage. It's not just a story of what you're drinking, not just the story of Bardstown, which is incredible as well. It's the full package. The whole story is something that you want to remember and you want to experience over and over again. So that's my hope for everybody.
Well, and for those that are going to get to Bardstown, you mentioned some of the people that'll be there, and some of the places that they'll get to check out. So, what events are you guys doing this year in your kind of debut year in Bardstown, and who else is going to be there? Because I know I got lucky enough to see Aaron, kind of doing a little bit of that in an acoustic set with Whiskey Myers a
Oh
couple years
God.
ago. It was him. Oh man, Adam Hood and Brent Cobb opened up, just doing kind of what you're talking about, little songwriters round, playing their guitar, going back and forth, and it's just a fantastic way to get to know people.
Yeah, yeah, it's the lineup. My wife Lauren Jenkins, who is kind of Americana songbird, will be playing. So she's got one of her and Christian Bush are actually doing a new album right now. Christian's producing it for her. My buddy Django Walker. Django is he's kind of a he's like a lifelong sipper. He's from Austin, Texas, and Django big down in the Texas music scene. But his dad was Jerry Jeff Walker, so Mr. Bojangles and those types of tunes, and so that's a lot of fun to have Django there. I mentioned James and Christian. David Ryan Harris. David Ryan is actually right now, I think this week, he's the guitar player for John Mayer. He sings and plays guitar for John, and so they're on the road right now. I think they're doing some dates. I think they're actually playing I want to say in Michigan, maybe Michigan State is where they're playing. It's like the largest tickets ever sold because it's him and it's John Mayer and Zach Bryan or something. It's crazy. It's like 120,000. It's something ridiculous. No, but he'll be in Bardstown, much smaller group. And but it's an Aaron right here is great. Aaron's songs are it's kind of. He's silly. He's funny. I mean, but he's very smart. I mean, he's just smart. He's a creative. My buddy Tyler Reeve. Tyler wrote "In Case You Didn't Know," which is a massive country song a few years ago for Brett Young and a few other written for Eric Church and Luke Combs and those guys. It's a pretty great lineup of folks. And then we're playing. We have a VIP event at Beam that we're doing. Which would be a lot of fun. I think that's kind of the smaller first night, and then we're at Heaven Hill with that crew over there, which is just a beautiful property. I mean, they did a really great job there, and I do think back to that experience word. I believe that a lot of what we will get to do, we've realized this with Napa and with Healdsburg, and one thing that people love if they're music and drink fans, they want to get the experience from us, but they really want to hear about the behind the scenes stories with each one of the out there, some wineries, but distilleries, and I think that's what is really going to be really fun. Even for myself, I was a history major, so I love learning these things. I love the stories of how these things came about, and I think with having some of the Fred and Freddie at Beam or with Jeff and the guys at Heaven Hill, like they did such a great job with that, I guess it's a historical walkthrough, with the brothers and everything. I'm sure everybody out there knows what I'm talking about if they're watching this podcast. So it's just a really, that's the stuff that I think is really beautiful about it, is you're going to get that side of it as well. You're really going to get, and I want that. I want people I want to learn out, because when I go home from a trip, I want to be able to tell my buddies, I want to be able to not just open the Heaven Hill 17 or 18, whatever it is. I want to be, man, the story, man, we went to the Rick House and they do this and you won't believe that this happened. I don't even care if it's true. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Because a lot of the stuff they tell me, I'm like, and that sounds like a Netflix special, but I don't care. It's still a great story. I'm a songwriter. That's what we're supposed to do. Kind of bend the truth a little bit. So we're doing. So that's Heaven Hill. We're going to be. There's going to be an event at Preservation. We're doing a night at the Trail Hotel as well, which is kind of going to be a kind of a bourbon mixer out on their lawn type of a situation, and that's Forbidden. Some of my buddies that's a Bardstown Bourbon Co. makes Forbidden. It's a great smaller bourbon that I love, and then Lux Row is involved, and then we're doing. There's a few other smaller guys that are coming in, and then also we're doing the final night for the regular night is at Jim Beam, and that's going to be another in a different spot. The great thing about a lot of these places, they do have extreme. October should be perfect weather in Kentucky. Well, you just think about it. It's like leaves changing. It's bourbon. We picked it specifically. I went up there and asked, and I was like, hey guys, when is the best time for you guys? And they were like, well, we're kind of coming off of our peak season at the end of October, but it is such a beautiful time there with the leaves changing, and it's to me, it's bourbon weather. That's when you're supposed to drink. It's like I want bourbon when it's like
That's
feeling
when you're
like that.
supposed to drink, listen to music
Yeah.
outside by a fire. I mean, I think that checks all the boxes.
Yeah, I mean, like, so that's where I think that's kind of the reason why this is going to be a special sip, and we never do a sip with the idea that it's going to be once. It's like it's always. I hope that you and I don't know if what it'll be called then. You'll have some new technology we do, but I hope 30 years from now we're laughing about the first time we talked about Sip Bardstown, because that's the way that you build it. And it's so this first year is kind of, I said this to you off air before, but I go, it's kind of the beta year. I'm trying to, like, we're kind of just figuring out what works and what doesn't work, or and I think it'll all work, but what's the best way to go about doing this in Bardstown? So, and one wonderful thing about SIP is that because it's such a small little group, it's okay that it's going to be it's easily moldable. And that's what I don't want this. This is I still play all the time. I play probably 200 shows a year. I still I'm in the studio recording. I have a PBS series that's all over the country. Like I have, and SIP is just a thing that was supposed to be fun with me and my buddies going out to drink and play music. It's become something bigger, but I don't really want it to become. It's nothing against Live Nation or any of those guys. I just don't want it to be that type of thing. I want this to be something and that's what Bardstown. That's why Bardstown works. Bardstown works because Bardstown is. It was named 3 years in a row, like the quaintest or cutest city or something in America. They have it looks like a John Mellencamp video when you drive down. You might as well play Ain't That America when you're driving down Main Street, and that's beautiful. That's a really special thing. So I think anyone that hasn't been to Bardstown before and is looking for a reason, well, this is a good reason. And if you can't make it this year, well, I hope you come next year. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, and obviously there's going to be plenty of music, but what bourbon are you excited to try? What are you looking forward to on that side of things? Because Napa, obviously you're enjoying some wine out there. You head down south of the border, maybe some tequila, rum,
Yeah,
depending on where you're at.
yeah.
Bourbon capital of the world. I think you better be drinking some bourbon.
Oh no, it's going to be a lot of bourbon. There's going to be. I actually, when you asked me earlier about it, how I vetted or how I figured out who was going to come, some of the people I had to make sure that they could handle their bourbon. Like I literally was like, wait, no, I've seen them on bourbon before. They can't come. But no, it's. I'm excited. Just like the first times I did. Napa is now about to be in its 7th year. Healdsburg in its 4th, 5th year. I didn't know. I grew up in South Carolina. We drank Boone's Farm. I mean, I was a kid, box wine. So learning about the wine is really fun for me, and it's gotten. I think this is what's going to happen coming to you guys. I became a wine snob because of doing SIP out there, because all of a sudden I'm at Silver Oak and I'm in all these places, and way past that, you're drinking all this incredible wine, and that's kind of how I feel about you guys. In Bardstown, they'll be like, "No, you can't drink that. You got to drink this." And then you're like, "Oh wow!" And then your palate goes up. And so, we did one thing that was really fun a couple months ago. I went to Bardstown and was very fortunate to do a barrel pick with Fred and Freddie No. They both came in and we did some photos and stuff and for SIP stuff and having them help pick the barrels. And we did did a Knob Creek, like I don't know, what at 9, I can't remember what it was exactly, but I will be getting that like next month, so I'm actually excited to try that, which I know is not like for all you bourbon snobs out there, that's not like going to be like the thing that's going to like make you excited, but it's still a barrel pick, and it was done with them, and it's excited, and that's kind of a thing that is for some of the SIP, folks that attend, but I'm excited about that, but I'm just excited about learning about like. When I went to Heaven Hill, they were given, they were that 17 and 8. We were trying things where I was like, whoa, I was like, this is good. I was like, it's also very strong, but but very, and preservation. I brought them up a few times, but they have such incredible juice. It's like you're just like, wow, this is really, really good stuff. But I can guarantee you, there's going to be things that I have no idea exist that somebody's going to be like, all right, you got to try this, and they may or may not even be in the SIP lineup this year. It's just like that's what happens when you go to a place like Bardstown. You get introduced, very, very similar to Napa. There's thousands of wineries in the Napa, Sonoma area, and some of them you've never heard of. And I feel like that's kind of what happens out there with you guys. You got, well, have you tried this one yet? Like you got to try this. And so I'm really excited about all of them. And I think one thing that I think is different that I experience with SIP is that usually, like I mentioned, the wineries in Napa. The wineries in Napa, whether it's Silver Oak or it's Alpha Omega or these big giant conglomerates, they have just these, they get a lot of events, and they don't necessarily have to be excited about any of them because there's just so many of them. And what usually happens is because of what SIP is, where it's the musicians and the music, we're lucky enough, and it's small enough to get the actual, I think in Bardstown, the distillery is excited, not because it's some crazy, they're not going to profit crazy amounts off of it. It's just a great event to be a part of, and they get to celebrate their product in this really, really special environment. And I think that allows for them to sometimes pull out things that they wouldn't normally pull out, or at least to talk about things they wouldn't talk about. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens in that way, because I can guarantee you it will happen. Because when we go back to the Trail Hotel at the end of the night, we're not going to go to bed. We're going to go to the bar and sit around and drink more whiskey, and inevitably somebody's going to pull out a guitar around there. And some of the most memorable, magical moments happen after the fact, but it's because you're part of the SIP family. I say that family gets thrown around so much, but it is like a family feel, and that's what I hope that's where some of those things happen, where you're like, oh my God, I can't. Did you try this one? And what happens for me, I'm working at the, I'm playing some of them. I'm running around doing things, and my team's doing things. I don't always get to try it, and somebody be like, you didn't try this? You got to try, and that's where. So I'm looking forward to all of that. So.
No, sounds like an amazing time, and it's a great combination of things, music, bourbon. So I don't know if there's a lot better combinations than that out there. Maybe wine. I'll give wine.
Well, I'll just say this: like we grew up playing in bars and restaurants, and it's like pretty much everybody's drinking while we're playing. So it just makes complete sense.
And a fall day, I mean, doesn't get much better than that. And for those that are interested in potentially going to SIP Bardstown this year, or even looking up other SIP experiences, where can they find that information? And what would you say to someone that's like, well, I'm almost there. I mean, they should be there by now, but if they're not.
Well, I would just say you can go to songwritersinparadise.com, songwritersinparadise.com. You can find us on all the socials and all that kind of stuff as well. And the only thing I would say for anybody is, life is short. And I think sometimes we get caught up in doing the things that, the big bombastic things that, and I've had this experience myself, and I think a lot of people out there have as well. If they're being honest, they've gone on the giant cruise ship, or they've gone on the thing over here, they've gone to the big concert, they've done these things, and it's a great feeling, but it's like it doesn't quite fill you up the way that you hoped it did. And my goal with SIP, just like my goal with my music, and I think all of us that are songwriters, we're hoping that we add something to everyone's the experience of this crazy world we live in on a grander scale that's goes beyond that 3 minutes that you heard us play that song. And that's what I think SIP is. I think SIP is an experience. I love the fact that some of the folks that will be at SIP, they say this every year on the last day. If they came for the whole time, I'll see them at breakfast and on the Sunday morning when everybody's leaving, and they'll be like, I'm so sad. I feel like summer camp's ending. That's what that says so much. And the fact that people just keep coming back, I think that also says a lot as well. But I just want it to be I don't know. I think the world is filled with a lot of things. People tell you what you need, and sometimes they just don't fill you up. And I'm hoping that the music, a little bit of food, a little bit of bourbon, and SIP will fill you up for a long time. So warm you, give you the Kentucky hug. Isn't that what they call it?
Yep, get a good Kentucky hug. Hey, that warms you right up if it's a little chilly at night. So I mean, that's like I said, it's a perfect combination: music, a little bit of good drink, and good music and good times. I mean, they go together so well. You have those conversations. You get to really know the people behind the songs, the people behind the bourbon, and I can't wait to see what you keep doing with Sip, and you keep coming back to Kentucky. And Patrick, man, thanks
No,
for
thanks,
sharing
John.
the story of Sip with me.
Thanks, brother, man. And you guys have fun drinking wherever you're at this today, tomorrow, wherever. You just let me know.
Absolutely.
All right, later, brother. Thanks so much for having me, man.